what keeps me up at night, the unpredictability of the supply chain disruptions is always a concern. Whether it's natural, we haven't talked about it, natural disasters, right?
Right.
With when there's a hurricane or not, I mean, that affects employment. In our businesses, we have both, like, national brands. We do have Starbucks in some of our spaces, and we also have our own proprietary brands or concepts as well. And yes, we do manage and run those operations.
Welcome to Farm to Fork, the Innovators. I'm David Maloney, president of Datum FS. With over 40 years in the food supply chain, we explore the stories and strategies transforming how we produce and serve food. Our guest innovator today is Arah Tan, Senior Vice President of Supply Chain and Logistics at OTG Management, a leading food service company operating in high-traffic venues such as airports. In this episode, we explore the challenges of managing a multi-brand supply chain, why a deep understanding of food service operations is essential in today's supply chain environment, the economic influences shaping travel and food service sectors, and a lighthearted reflection on how moms were our first true supply chain mentors. So buckle up, hit that subscribe button, and let's harvest progress together. This is Farm to Fork, the Innovators, where the future of the food supply chain starts with this episode. All right, Arah, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Besides, before we start, as Arah just reminded me, to all the moms out there and to Arah, happy Mother's Day. Go ahead.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Well, good morning, good afternoon for everybody here. I'm Ira. I'm the Senior Vice President of Supply Chain at OTG. I oversee the entire supply chain process, ensuring our operations at airports run smoothly and efficiently. This role involves everything from sourcing high quality ingredients to coordinating logistics and distribution strategies tailored to a fast paced environment. Airports present unique challenges such as tight timelines, security protocols, and the need for seamless collaboration with multiple stakeholders, making my job both exciting and complex. By the way, just for everybody to know, OTG is it's a hospitality and food service management company based in New York, particularly known for its operations in airports and other travel related venues. We focus on creating innovative dining experiences and managing a variety of restaurants, bars, and retail concepts in high traffic areas, particularly in major airports like LaGuardia, JFK, and Newark Airport. Our services often include concept development, operational management, and customer experience enhancement, aiming to elevate the overall dining experience for travelers.
Cool. Thank you for that. So is it fair to say we'll call this space the food management space?
Yes.
Okay.
So we both have space and retail as well.
Okay. And in the food management space, folks, everybody here's probably listening has been in an airport. You'll notice there can be a lot of, let's say, chain restaurants in that airport.
That's right.
But typically they are run by whom in that airport, or in your company? Who are those chain restaurants run by?
So it's different for every airport. So in our businesses, we have both, like, national brands. We do have Starbucks in some of our spaces, and we also have our own proprietary brands or concepts as well. And yes, we do manage and run those operations.
Yeah. And so essentially so just to clear to everybody, if you walk through an airport, typically if you see a Starbucks, as you mentioned, that is some sort of food management franchise agreement. Is that
That is
fair?
correct. That is correct. So the company, whoever would run it in the airport, in that case of if that's an area that if that's a Starbucks that we're running, it's our employees, it's our infrastructure. We're the ones running it.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like Is it acting kind of like a franchisee in some ways?
That is right.
Okay. And so I would expect you would have a very complex supply chain dealing with not being a franchisee of one brand, but being a franchisee of numerous brands. And oh, by the way, having your own concepts to manage. Is that fair?
You said it right. The company, it's not like your typical, like, say, for example, we go Starbucks, right? For
Uh,
us, we would call it a street side operation, Starbucks. So in the street side operations, when you're managing the supply chain part of it or the operations part of it, you're dealing with one menu, a set of same suppliers for almost everywhere. So in our business model, if that's how you call it, it's different because you're not dealing with just one menu with just the Starbucks. We're also dealing with other brand concepts that have a different type of menus and have different sets of suppliers. And to top it all, David, too, every airport is different when it comes to distribution and logistics. So they have all different requirements
hmm.
when it comes to receiving product and the distribution and logistics. So some so some airports would have like a third party logistics company that handle all the receiving for all their suppliers. There are some airports too where we could go direct delivery or we could just go straight, and
Mhm.
then to top it off, since it's in the airport setting, you can't just like, okay, there's a different supplier the next day. You got to go in the next day, right? It's not because they have to go through the security process of getting badged and go through the security screen.
So you're telling me that a driver for a food service distributor would need to be badged?
For the most part, yes.
Yeah.
So it's different. It could be, so for example, if they are going to deliver to the airport right at the back dock, if it's that truck, that driver, yes, they have to be badged. But if it's for some airports, and that's why they have those third party receiving, they could just pretty much like drop it off there,
Yeah.
not necessarily be badged. But for the most part, the airport still would want it to go through some sort of like a security screening, in one way or another.
Yeah. And people might be saying, well, wait. Starbucks is corporately owned restaurants in the United States. But what many people may not know is typically these corporate restaurant industries that are or who aren't, let's just call it franchising or selling franchises, will partner with companies like yourself,
Yes.
right? To provide a license agreement to operate in something like an airport, maybe something in a university setting or internationally. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. So before we dig a little bit deeper into OTG and the successes and challenges that you see in the supply chain, how did you get into the supply chain? I mean, off camera, we were talking about a mutual colleague and friend, Linda Dunn,
Yes.
right? And so who's now at Georgetown teaching supply
Yes,
chain, I
she
think
is.
leading that program.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, folks, episode about a year ago, I don't remember the episode number, but I did interview Linda. So, but how did you get into supply chain?
Yeah, good thing you mentioned Linda. But anyway, let me just start first. So my journey into the food service supply chain started really with my passion for food and hospitality. I began my career in the restaurant industry, just like I guess probably a lot of us do, working in operations, where I quickly realized the critical role of supply chain playing in delivering quality dining experience. Transitioning into supply chain felt like a natural progression because I was working when I was working in restaurants before, and then got into by chance being able to go into warehouse and commissary operations for a Charlotte airport, and this was like almost 10 years ago. So just pivoting from running restaurants and running a commissary and warehouse operations for HMS Host, that's how it started and got me into supply chain. And then by I was given the the great opportunity. I guess luckily I was given the opportunity by Linda Dunn, and that's how Linda. In fact, I don't have any background really in supply chain. Really, my background in supply chain was really, running the commissary and warehouse operations for Charlotte Airport at that time. However, I guess probably she saw the passion in me, but at the same time, too, my experience and background in operations, really, I'm boots on the ground, right?
Uh-huh.
I have no experience in contracting, negotiations. I don't know any of that stuff, but I'm very interested.
Uh-huh.
And Linda gave me the opportunity and the chance. So I got promoted to supply chain director at that time for host. And she has been my mentor ever since. And that's where I learned, learning the contracts, learning each of the categories, understanding the supply chain processes, distribution, logistics, and so forth. So that's really how I got into a supply chain. And up to now, I say that do I regret going into operation supply chain? Actually, during COVID, I thought like, why did I get myself into supply chain during the pandemic? Because that was, if there was anything, I guess that we were, you understand this, David, right? COVID. If there was
Sure.
one thing or one area where it's very challenging, it's us in the supply chain world, especially right after the pandemic. But I quickly realized that, boy, this was really actually, this is really a perfect time for any probably even new person going into supply chain, because if there's any training, learning that you could do, I think it was really during the pandemic, because I guess you can't even find anything on the books, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
would make you nothing. There's nothing in school, in books, or even prior, I would say prior experience. I mean, it's never happened. It's the first time. So
Uh-huh.
for any of the supply chain folks out there who were here or happened to be there and was able to navigate through all the complexities and difficulties and challenge we had to deal with supply chain right after the pandemic, I would say can like bring it on, like right after that, right? What else is new?
Yeah, and so that's a great point. And so HMS host, can you define that for us just in case people don't know who they are?
I mean, again, so HM Associates, I'm not with the company right now, but I work with them for 20 years. So it's similar to what we do with OTG right now.
Mhm.
For still, from what I know, at that time, it's also in the same business model. Operating both national brands and their proprietary concepts and retail as well during that time in airports and travel plazas.
Great, thank you. Okay, and so OTG, the airports,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, I have to ask. In the airports, well, you weren't there during COVID, were you?
In the
When did
airports,
OTG?
right, no, and it
Yeah,
was right after I was in between. Actually, there was like a little gap in between when I left host and came on board with OTG.
yeah.
And I had like a short stint working for Reef Kitchens. And as
Mhm,
you know, at that time, Reef Kitchens these are all the ghost kitchens
mhm.
businesses that happened. And then luckily I got in with First Watch.
Yeah,
So if you probably know, I don't know if you know
yeah,
Layla Repet, again, another mentor, great company. I've been given this great opportunity that I have with OTG right now.
yeah. So for those of you, you may not know this, but I live in Sarasota.
I know you too.
Yeah,
Lived in
so
Sarasota for a
First Watch,
year.
yeah, First Watch, I'm a big fan. It's one of my favorite concepts,
It is up
right?
until
Great
now.
business,
I
great
love
story.
I love
Yeah,
those guys.
yeah, and I actually my family owns a restaurant in downtown Sarasota, pastry shop back
Oh,
cafe. It's been there many years,
okay.
and it's right down the street from the original First Watch. So
Yes.
so I'm a big fan, big fan. Well, that's great. So OTG and the airports. You mentioned the security issues,
Yes.
right? You also we kind of touched on the idea of, wait a minute, you're just not managing one, for lack of better terms, franchised restaurant. You're managing several and your own concepts,
Yes.
right? Which I'm assuming might differ depending on where you are, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, can you expound on that? I mean, what kind of complexity from like if you had to compare it to like First Watch, like kind of, and I'm not saying you give detailed information about First Watch, but like a SKU count or a product count, or like how much bigger is your management? Let's just say.
Boy, where do I start? It's its own different beast, if I would call it, when it comes to supply chain, on the intricacies of supply chain when you're managing a business like, HMS Host or OTG for that example. To your point, yes. So if we do have national chain restaurants and they do have their own required suppliers, right? Recommended and required suppliers that you need to get set up with. So you got to set them up. But at the same time, on top of that, we also have our own proprietary concepts and sometimes local concepts too that we have set up for particular airports. So you could just imagine the sheer number of suppliers that we need to set up for each of those. So whether for the national brand
Uh-huh.
that we have license to operate, and also for our own concepts. But the key to it is, number one is to kind of know leveraging. Is it really, that's what I've been doing a lot of part. A lot of the things that I do is negotiating and leveraging.
Mm,
So for example, I'm not gonna mention a particular brand, David,
sure.
but for example, one national brand, again, a burger concept, like a national burger concept. And they would want obviously anything that's proprietary or it's got their brand or logo. I can't do anything with that. That's something I cannot negotiate or leverage. I gotta go bring this in. However, for things like produce, right? I mean, for produce, it could be that's the part where it's easy to leverage, meaning
Mm,
if they want a particular produce supplier that they use for their street side location, and then we have our own produce vendor where we already have negotiated with. So that's the part where we leverage and say to the brand, and say, hey, could we use our produce supplier? And then just make sure give us your specification, and we'll have our produce brand vendor bring it in. So that's the part that we try to do for the most part when
mhm.
we're doing that. So try to leverage so we don't have to set up another supplier. The
Yeah.
same thing goes for disposables, anything that's non-branded, like if it will just be your regular disposable fork, spoons, knives, or napkins.
Uh-huh.
That part, as long as it's not logoed, where if they could, they again partnership with the national brand, just allow us to be able to use our program. So again, that way we don't have to set up a supply, but at the same time, as you know, Dave, it's our pricing, it's our program. We get our own rebates.
Uh-huh.
That's how it is. Because sometimes too, the brands, obviously we understand that they have their own program, and sometimes for the most part, it's to our advantage too, because sometimes their program is a lot better than ours,
Uh-huh.
right? So it's just a matter of just making sure we're understanding their requirements, and then understanding to what can we do to make sure that we are making them happy, being able to comply with their requirements, but at the same time, too, what would also be beneficial for OTG.
Mm, yes. Very good. So is it fair to say that the number of suppliers you would have compared to,
A street side operation,
yeah, yeah,
right?
whether that's First
Yes, it's
Watch or
big.
whoever, would
Correct.
be
Big.
considerably bigger, larger?
Correct. Yes, that is correct. Considerably bigger compared to even let's say it would be another company that has different brands, because you would have your Dardens, and they will have their own different brands and in different concepts.
Uh-huh.
But for the most part, if it's a street side and their own, they would usually use the same distributor, the same produce vendor, and what that's just different specs. But in our case, to your point, that's correct. So I get that's the one of the challenges, and I would say like really the reality with the type of our business model.
Huh. And so what are some of the success stories you're seeing in the current supply chain?
So I would say probably we've seen remarkable success in streamlining our logistics program, like I mentioned to you a while ago. Significantly reducing, the number of suppliers and the number of SKUs, reducing lead times, and then improving product availability. One standout success story is our partnership with local suppliers. If there's any savior with doing this, it's our partnership with local suppliers. Because for the most part, and we always try to partner with a local supplier. Right. It enhances the freshness of our offerings and supports the community as well. Additionally, our investment in technology has allowed us to leverage data analytics for better forecasting and inventory management. In the airport setting, this means we can respond quickly to fluctuations in passenger volume and adapt our offerings accordingly, ensuring that our customers always have access to the best products.
Interesting. What is the airport business like? I mean, is it fair to say that it's busier during the holidays and maybe busier during the summer and the rest of the year is fairly steady, or how does it ebb and flow?
And you say yes, that is correct. However, it depends on the airport. It depends on the airport, and it also sometimes too it would depend on the airline. So, for example, if it would be like MCO Orlando Airport, where the passengers typically that go to that airport are coming there for a vacation, right? So you would know that during the summer season or spring break and probably Christmas, so they're busier during those
Mhm,
times, right? But when
mhm.
it's not, then it's not as busy. Or I'll mention this for example in an airport where it caters to a lot of business travelers. You could probably say LaGuardia or probably maybe Newark Airport too, or even Houston. So if they cater to a lot of domestic or business travelers, so that one with that it doesn't really matter what time of the year or season because it caters to business travel. So it really depends on the type of travelers that go into that airport. JFK for one, you would see it's international flights, right? And if you happen to be in the terminal that caters to a lot of international flights, then in that time too, it could be the season, and again to it could be all be different. So to your point too, there's not really a time of the year, although it's pretty much kind of consistent. To your point, yes, summer travel is higher during the summer months during the holidays, yes. But again, it's different for the airport and for the type of passengers that it caters to.
Do you see an influence from the general economic conditions, let's just say in the United States, on how that influences your airport traffic and sales?
Yes, that is true. So as you know, when pandemic happened, right? When everybody went, not everybody, but majority of the businesses went remote work. A lot of us went remote work. So that I would say, the drop in business travel was very noticeable during
Mhm.
that time. So it's not the same. Again, working with Charlotte Airport during my time with HMSOs. It's a hub. I would say it's an airport that caters so much for business travelers.
Yeah.
I could just imagine the drop in enplanements going to that area with that airport because of the drop, because of a lot of people just working remote instead of traveling for business. And I guess it still happens right now. And then some of the others. So when you mentioned about economic too, so I would say if people are thinking about doing recreational travel, they're probably going to cut back on having to travel. And yes, that would affect. So having to cut back on traveling eventually would affect the what we call as enplanements going for that particular airport.
So, and I'm dying to ask you this. Are you seeing any of that now with kind of the ambiguity, uncertainty around the economy and tariffs and all that stuff?
I would say It's hard to say that I'm seeing that right now.
Okay, that's good news.
If I would be just making my own, this is not what's happening with OTG or with a company right now. But like what I just said, I mean, it just makes perfect sense, right? If people may cut back on travel when money is tight, and if companies also are cutting back on business travels too, I mean that really, I mean you're gonna have to add the two together, and you would know that it would eventually go down. But as it is right now, I would like to think that I mean people still would like to travel. I especially after there was one time like after years after COVID when people were stuck in their houses, right? I don't know if you know this, that people just wanted to travel. This
Yeah, oh
people
yeah.
just went out.
I
People
still just
started
want to
dining out,
travel.
and people again that's so I really don't. And but to I mean it's doesn't mean that economics are right, but just people just wanted to travel. It doesn't mean whether even if money's tight or not, but people just wanted to go out.
Yeah, they just budget
They just yeah,
accordingly and
that's
figure out
right.
other. But it's generally good news. I would say that you all aren't seeing that, at least not yet. But I can understand why you would think that would be concern.
That is
Yeah.
correct. So not yet. It's still early for
Mhm,
us to predict such.
mhm.
Again, like what I said, it's different for every airport. It's not every airport is different.
Well, that's encouraging, right? So, what keeps you up at night? What are your biggest challenges in your supply chain?
Oh boy. Um, what keeps me up at night? The unpredictability of the supply chain disruptions is always a concern. Whether it's natural, we haven't talked about it, natural disasters, right?
Right.
Worth when there's a hurricane or not. I mean, that affects employment. Either it's a good news or bad news. Good news, it could be that means people or passengers are in airports. So if they're there, they can't go out. That's good for us because they're going to be,
Right.
I mean, right?
I'll remember that next time I'm stuck at the airport. I'll say,
Stuck
"All
in an
right, girl,
airport.
this
That's
one's for you."
right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Please remember me.
Yeah.
But it can also go sideways too. I mean, too, if they're not able, so like if I mean during hurricanes, so it could also go the other way. No travel because there's not gonna be they're gonna have to stop. There's lesser travels during the times of hurricane, or they're gonna have to not have a flights go out. Geopolitical issues is another thing that also keeps me up at night. As I mentioned, I hope the pandemic doesn't happen again. And if it does, I don't know. Maybe are we prepared? Do we have what we learned from the previous pandemic we had? Probably. So these factors significantly impact operations. Again, the complexities of managing distribution and logistics in airport, such as coordinating with airlines, adhering to security protocols, like I mentioned to you a while ago, and ensuring timely deliveries, add to the pressure. I'm particularly mindful of how me and my team can build resilience into our supply chain to make sure we're adapting to the challenges and maintaining efficiency and service quality.
Yeah. I think we as a food service supply chain learned to be a little bit more flexible during COVID. Is that
Yes.
fair? And we
Yes.
also learned to have perhaps more contingency plans. Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
And my team, I would say I am so proud with the 3 years that I've been working with OTG and being able to set a foundation again coming from a company HMSOs for 20 years and bringing in that experience to OTG, having
Mhm.
that background with working boots on the ground, like right, because I didn't get the job like right
Yeah.
there in
Yeah.
supply chain. I came from
Yep.
operations. I always say this an example. The one thing that I would say I would say different from the others, and maybe some are the same, right? When, say, for example, I have one of my category managers come up to me and say, "Hey, Ira, I've got this great deal on ranch dressing. They're gonna give me this great thing, or whatever. I'll probably say rice. I think rice is a perfect example, like a
Right.
bulk of rice, right? Boiled rice. giving me a great, so but it comes in, I'll find out. So it's a 50, let's just say it's a 50 or 25 kilogram sack of rice, right?
Mhm.
But the way I see it, again, coming from operations, is the person, number one, is there storage for that big of a rice to bring it in, right? Because
Mhm.
you're getting a great deal with a bulk item. Of course, you're gonna get a good deal versus having to bring it in smaller sacks, right?
Mhm.
But if I put myself in the shoes of the person receiving the item. It's a lady, maybe I'm 5 foot
Yeah.
tall,
Great
David.
point.
Yeah, I'm 5 foot tall.
Mhm.
I would have a receiver just like me, a lady receiver too, because we don't discriminate. I mean, the receivers, it could be a lady or it could be a guy.
Mhm.
It's not every time you would have a receiver. You could have a receiver that's picking up. How could can I lift up a 25 or 50 kilogram sack of rice and then bring it in? So that's going to be so that's a factor that I would. So that's an example of the types of stuff that I deal with, and some of the, I guess, the experience of the background that I bring into to my team. It's just because you're getting a good deal doesn't mean that it's something that would work out for the operations. Because you gotta have to think of the person receiving the product too. You gotta have to consider the storage, right? You're gonna have to consider also like the food safety part, right? So David, just so you know, in airports, so think about it. If you have a third party, you drop it in, okay, they will have to go through it, and then they don't deliver it right away. Sometimes they do deliver it right away because they would receive it and then they deliver it to our back dock, to our terminals.
Mhm.
So that's how it works. So consider the time in between. It's not like, again, your regular street side operations where they drop it, it receives, it gets to your freezer or your refrigerator right away. So there's also having the logistics part of managing the QA, the food safety part of it too, goes into planning the whole process. So making sure, ensuring that our food is always safe. That our temps are, we do take pride of making sure that we control our temperatures. We're managing the food safety part too.
Yeah. And I think what I've learned we've owned this restaurant down in downtown Sarasota. It's called Paste Art for anybody who happens to come in downtown Sarasota.
Mm-hmm.
The supply chain doesn't end at the back door of the restaurant,
Yes,
right? It flows all the way through to the customer.
that is
All the
correct.
way through to the customer. And to your point, how the size of the packages, how they store, how the employees can handle them. Obviously, there are risks, right,
Mm-hmm.
at that. So that's a great point.
Correct.
So where do you see the food service, or where would you like to see the food service supply chain a decade from now?
Probably in 10 years, I envision the food service supply chain becoming even more integrated and technology driven, right? With all the AI stuff, especially you're hearing everywhere else, especially in airport environments. Automation and artificial intelligence, AI, will play a pivotal role in optimizing processes. From inventory management to customer service. Sustainability will be also be at the forefront with a strong emphasis on local sourcing and reducing food waste, which we are doing, which we've been
Yeah,
doing in OTG and we've always been striving to always to do. I also see a greater focus on transparency, where consumers can trace the journey of their food from farm to table, fostering trust and loyalty.
cool. Is it fair to say it strikes me like when I'm traveling and I've got some time to kill and I'm gonna sit down and eat, let's say, maybe not in a rush. I'm looking for that local concept, whether
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Philadelphia and I forget it's called Chicky Pete's or something. I'm looking for that local concept in there just to get a taste, just
Yes.
to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
That would, I assume, play well into your
Portfolio.
yeah, and
Yes,
but also play well into your mission of sourcing locally.
that is correct. That's right. So, and when I mentioned our brands, right? Because I mentioned that,
Mhm.
so we also bring in our own brands too. When we bring in or create this other concepts, the mission there is really to try to seek out local vendors, because that's really we do it's because it's our brand and it's our concept. We have that flexibility to be able to do our own sourcing, and yes, we do source first from local suppliers, right?
Mhm.
Because again, it's number one, you could rely on them. They're just there. Usually when we do local sourcing, it's just a certain kilometer, a certain
Yeah.
miles away from the airport. But at the same time too, it's also good with the community. A lot of our airports are managed and run by the city or the county or the state, and that is good for them when they know that local businesses or local suppliers are being used.
Yeah. Great point. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. You travel
Okay,
quite a bit. Is that fair?
I do travel. Yes.
Okay. So which airport, in your opinion, has the best food?
Has the best food.
Yeah.
Actually, I would say one of my favorite ones are in LaGuardia, called
More.
Bubby's. If you happen to stop by at LaGuardia, oh my God, wonderful, beautiful airport that was built in LaGuardia. And so one of the concepts that we have there is Bubby's. And
Bobby's?
yes, Bubby's. It was, so we had this concept almost probably a couple of years ago, and it's actually a street side concept. That there is a Bubby's in New York, and boy, people, I don't know if you're in TikTok, people really line up just to get their pancakes and their biscuits. And you know what? When you're in the airport, you probably don't have to line up for an hour or two
Yeah.
just to get a taste of their menu, but it's really good. I mean, just the fact that people are lining up for it. I guess when you go to LaGuardia, this is really your chance to be able to try a Bobby. So I would say that's one, and yes, and I'm gonna say probably it's one of the concepts that we operate in LaGuardia Airport.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. I'd like to thank you for being on the show. This was fun.
Thank you to David, and then and I know we mentioned at the initial part of our discussion that it's Mother's Day
Yeah.
this Sunday, and for if this happens to airs after Mother's Day, I know we always have to celebrate our mothers every day, right? But I just wanted to highlight the importance of my role as a mother and how it has shaped me as a leader, especially in supply chain too. There was one person that has shared with me that we are negotiating when we're still babies. You know that. So we as babies
I got
start
four kids.
our first negotiating experience is with our mothers when we're
Yep.
babies,
Hmm.
because when we cry, that means we're telling our mom, I want more, I want milk, I want you to feed me,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
when I don't want something like it, so there's some negotiation part happening. And I would say probably our first mentor when it comes to negotiations is our mom.
Yeah.
Whether you want more TV time or no TV time, or you're grounded or what, I guess your moms are out there. I just had to mention this because I go back to that part of how I got into supply chain. I would say too, but motherhood has also molded me to become the person that I am today, and also as a supply chain leader that I am today. I have two kids, both are grown. Thank God I'm an empty nester now.
Mhm.
But so actually they're graduating college this summer. So
Oh,
for both my
congratulations.
kids, so my daughter's graduating FIT this summer, and my son's also graduating at UMD as well. So again, I salute to mothers out there, single moms, working moms, and also those my teammates that have their moms too. Happy Mother's Day. And again, David, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be able to do this podcast with you.
Oh, my pleasure. And amen on the moms. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of another insightful journey through the fields of innovation on Farm to Fork, the Innovators. It's an honor to have you listen. If you found today's episode as fascinating as we did, don't forget to share it with a friend, write a review, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. Farm to Fork is not just a podcast, it's a community of forward thinkers and change makers. Your thoughts and ideas matter to us. Reach out on social media or through our website, datumfs.com, and be a part of the ongoing conversation. As we wrap up today, remember, the future of the food supply chain is in our hands. Stay curious, stay innovative, and let's continue growing together. Until next time, this is David Maloney, signing off from Farm to Fork, the Innovators. Thank you for being a part of this community. See you in the next episode.